Hello, BookTube. It's time for another book to film. And this week, it is The Haunting, film that was done in 1963, directed by Robert Wise, starring Julie Harris, Claire Bloom, Richard Johnson, and Russ Tamblyn. And the screenplay was by Nilsson Gooding, and it was based on Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. This is a Penguin edition that is actually a cover edition for the series, the Netflix series, 10 parts, that purportedly is based on the film, but uh, from what I hear, I haven't seen it, but I hear it's not much close to the film. So let's get into it. The Haunting of Hill House was published in 1959 by Shirley Jackson, and it's a story about a house and a small group of people who inhabit it for a during the summer for a couple weeks, or at least a short period anyway. I think the plan was to stay longer, but the house had other plans. Um, the history of the house, it's sort of, as you learn in the story, it was built by a Hugh Crane, basically for his wife and family. He had two daughters, and he built it. It's a very odd house. It's very huge. It's huge. It's massive, and there are no sort of right angles in it. Everything's skewed. So when you think you're going down a hallway and you think you're going in a straight direction, you're not. You're going somewhere else. And what you think is behind you could be to the right or to the left. And it's just on a massive scale. Is like you think that your room is in the front, but it's actually to the side or looks to the side. Like I say, everything is skewed, and it's sort of around. It takes you around, and there's sort of a center, and dozens and dozens and dozens of rooms with doors on them, and the doors are, because everything is slightly cockeyed, I guess you could say. Doors close by themselves. So this is the situation. He builds this house. It's 90 years old at the time of the story, approximately. And his wife dies, so he's got two children, and he marries again. His second wife dies, and then he leaves the house, uh, and the children leave. One of them comes back and lives there, and there's a huge animosity between the sisters, who owns the house. And as one of them, the one that lives in the house, hires a companion from the village, and or the small town. This is all set in New England, and she becomes old, like with the companion, but the companion, there is possibility that the companion had sort of desires on manipulating the old woman to get things. So the lady dies, and the rumor is that she might have neglected her, so she dies and she inherits the house. The other sister is obviously not very happy, goes in and steals stuff, or potentially does, but eventually the companion kills herself, hangs herself off a little balcony in a room, like up some stairs. And that's how the sort of story is started now, because it's been passed on to a Sanderson family. And we get a Dr. Montague, who's researching, psychic phenomena, supernatural phenomena. And he has scoured sort of newspapers, or his team has, to identify people that have been part of some supernatural event that is not explained away any other way. And so they narrow everything down to like 5 or 6 names. Most drop out, most aren't interested, but two women are, an Eleanor Vance and Theodora, no other name. Eleanor has just recently sort of become free in a sense because she had spent a decade or more taking care of her sick mother, and she's her mother died, and she is sort of is staying at her sister and her husband's place, her sister and brother-in-law's place. They have a child as well, and they had sold the house, the property, but there is a car that's sort of half owned by Eleanor and her sister, and she wants to go. She's been requested or asked to go to this place to do this research by Dr. Montague. So she wants the car because it's a long ways away, and her sister doesn't want to give the car. Her sister's trying to dictate everything for her, but she sneaks away and steals the car, which is half hers anyway. So she winds up at Hill House. She's the first to arrive. There are caretaker, Mr. Dudley, and his wife. He's outside. The gates are always chained shut, and he eventually lets her in, and she's shown her room by Mrs. Dudley and told about that she won't be there at nighttime, and she won't serve it wait on anybody or serve anybody, but she will have food ready, she will clean, and that's it. And then Theodore arrives, and they have sort of connecting, nearby rooms or connecting rooms. And then Dr. Montague eventually shows up. But the stipulation Dr. Montague had that for him to rent this house, somebody from the Sanderson family had to be there. So there's a young man, Luke Sanderson, that is goes with the sort of chaperones as well. So what happens is that through the time, Eleanor has her psychic experience was when she was a child, there were pebbles that rained down her house for a long time, and it couldn't be explained. Theodora has the ability like ESP type thing, and she is. I've been able to identify the most cards that are held up and she can't see at some institute, and it's sort of like she's legendary for doing that because nobody had ever done that. So that's why they're there. And this background that I told you about the house, Dr. Montague tells them, this background. And the first night, Eleanor, they hear this like banging on the door like a cannon. They describe it, and somebody trying to get into the room, and they're both frightened. Theodore, she goes with Theodore. They're frightened, and then finally it stops, and then Montague and Luke, but they had been outside chasing what they thought was a dog, and they think the house is trying to separate them for when this happens. So Eleanor or Nell and Theo sort of start sharing the bedroom together, and they experience more things. But then, they go outside, and there's all the things, and Eleanor is sort of enchanted by the house. Like it's as if she's being possessed by the house at times, and she also has these bad memories, being isolated with her mother and all this kind of stuff. Theo is more open. It's hinted at that she is a lesbian, but it's not overtly done in the book. But it is pretty clear that she is. And that sort of taints their relationship a little bit because, you think of the period and Eleanor, she's a bit antagonistic towards her, but she is friendly at the same time. Theo is very protective of her. Uh, so yeah, so you got this, but then all of a sudden, the Dr. Montague's wife shows up with a chauffeur who's, a part of some school, and she's there to do some other research as well. And she berates him for not doing certain things that should have been done. So she takes the nursery, which is sort of the heart, the worst place, or the most active supernatural part of the house. There's a coldness outside of the door, and she stays in there, and she uses a planchette, and she gets this her chauffeur Arthur, and they write down huge reams of stuff, and he's not convinced that this really is, but she says it is. But it goes on that, um, Eleanor is too. She's pulled in too much to the house. She's very pulled in, and they figure that they think that she's going to, um, she's going to lose it basically. So they ask her to leave, and she's leaving. She's driving away, and the text clearly states that she's driving slowly down the lane, and then she says, "Why am I turning towards the tree? Why am I driving towards the tree? Why don't they stop me? Why am I doing this? Why can't I stop?" Sort of thing, and she hits the tree and sort of fade out on that section, and then it shows the last little paragraph of the book is basically Mrs. Saunderson, enormously relieved to hear that Dr. Montague and his party had left the Hill House. She would have turned them out. She told the family lawyer if Dr. Montague had shown any sign of wanting to stay. So she was like the woman that rented the house to him is glad they're gone. But then it's like, Dr. Montague retired active from pursuits of supernatural, and everybody goes on their merry way. Doesn't say what the what the WTF, like what happened at the end here, because it's like, did Eleanor die? It's not unclear, but I'll get into that a little more because it's like I have problems with the book. But anyway, now we go to the film, 1963, Robert Wise. Robert Wise was a fabulous director. He directed this. It was a screenplay written by, as I said, Nilsson Gidding. And while Nilsson Gidding was writing the script, he sort of realized, hey, there are no ghosts here. It's all in Eleanor's head. And then he speaks to Shirley Jackson about it, and she listens to him politely, and then she turns around and says, "You're wrong, but it's a great idea." And that's how he's apparently took it for it. And people have watched the film and saying, well, it is all within her head. The only problem I have is that that's not right, because other people experienced the things she did. But you see, I think it's a fabulous film. It's well directed. The lighting is fabulous. The house isn't quite up to the standard of the book the way it's described, but he did a lot, and it's filmed in black and white, and that's why it's so fabulous. The black and white aspect is it makes the film because of the shadows, the lighting, and everything. But he also used infrared lighting to when he did outside shots to show the clouds looking a little different, and then he used a wider angle lens in the hallways, and he had to sort of almost beg to get this lens because it was an experimental lens and it was distortion around the edges, and he thought that was perfect and that would work perfect because it would give this eeriness to the hallways, and he used it sparingly, and he filmed in widescreen as well. But yeah, he purposely, that's why like there's distortion around the edge in some scenes, and that's done purposely. So, and the weird thing is that they've changed names a little bit. It's no longer Dr. Montague, it's Dr. Marquay. He's an anthropologist. But everything's pretty well the same in many ways, that he shortlists and he searches for these people. And Julie Harris plays Eleanor, but they changed her surname as well to it was Vance, and I think they changed it to Lance. Is that right in the film? I think so. Yeah, but they changed the name. And then Luke is who he is. He's the sort of he's the black sheep of the Saunderson family, but there to chaperone and everything. And it pretty well follows the pretty closely to the book, but it leaves out stuff. Like, it makes things a little more interesting. The characters are more interesting. Like, it's a good story in the book, but she doesn't do things like she brings in, as I say, the wife and this other person. It's like these people are superfluous. They don't do anything. It's like these are wasted characters. I don't think they have any purpose there at all. So they're written out of the screenplay and the film altogether, which is great. They enhance the relationship between Theo and Nell. They cut out all the stuff. Like, there's differences, as I say. They take out all the information. I mean, scenes that they're outside. It's all pretty well inside, with a little bit of walking outside, a little bit on a veranda or a balcony, or just outside the door. So there's a little bit of that, but it's mostly in claustrophobic in rooms, and a little smaller rooms. And their relationship is interesting because it is a sort of, because Claire Bloom, I'd forgotten how fabulous she is, because the last time I saw this before watching this yesterday was about 30 years ago. And she is just fabulous in it. She plays the subtleness of things so well, because it does pretty clear show that she's a lesbian and she's attracted to Eleanor. And Eleanor realizes this and sort of, talks about her being unnatural and stuff like that. So there's an antagonistic relationship there, but also caring one on Theo's part, for more than just she cares about her, and everybody cares about Eleanor, Nell. And there's some great, like, the scenes that are great in here are multitude, but every mirror, there's a lot of reflection in mirrors, which I really like, but the mirrors are clouded. It's I've seen this. I don't know what the process is, but the back of a mirror is sort of like a painted or something. It's usually like a bronzy color that I've seen. But if that's sort of flaking off and things like that, the mirror itself, it looks mottled. It looks like you're looking through clouds. And most of the mirrors are like that. Some of them are clear, but you've got a reflection within a reflection, like a reflection of one mirror to something else in somebody. So even though a character is not on in the camera eye, they could be in the mirror, or a reflection from another mirror in that mirror. And it's really neat how this is done. And also too, and that's where, like, Claire Bloom, I think she just shines in this film, because she is a lot of times in the background of the scene, but she just doesn't sit there and static. She does little businesses. She does a little business. She does little things that make it so real. And I really love her. I love her character, because I first saw her. The very first thing was the first film that she ever did was with the Discovery, but the other ones released first. But her first acting was Limelight with Charles Chaplin. She played Teresa, a suicide, like, she tried to commit suicide, a dancer that had lost the use of her legs, but it's all psychological. But anyway, she was quite good in that. Like, it was her first role, and she had something about her that was great. And in this film, it's fabulous. And also, she later went on into the early 80s and played Lady Marchmain in the Brideshead Revisited, which is fabulous. And her performance there is great as well. She's still alive. She's 90 years old. Julie Harris, a variety of things. I don't know too much of her background, but she was very good with this. She played sort of a dour and dowdy woman that's been, spent most of her life taking care of her mother. and has never had a relationship, never really met people. She's socially awkward, and she just plays it so well. And Richard Johnson is a really good actor, and he he's been in quite a few things that I've seen, but he doesn't sort of stand out too much. But there is, you can tell that there's some craftsmanship there with his acting. And in the so-called commentary, it's not really a commentary in the general sense on this DVD. It's there's recordings of all the actors and the director Robert Wise and the Nilsson Gidding, the screenplay, the writer, but they're from other things, and they've just pieced them together, and it works quite well. And Richard Johnson was talking. He was saying while he was filming this in the daytime, he was then going to the theater in the evening and playing in The Devils, which was based on the Aldous Huxley book Devils of Loudun. So he was a busy little guy for that. And Russ Tamblyn was he was in another film. He was the main actor dancer in West Side Story, which was also Robert Wise' film. And I think it's a Paramount. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a Paramount picture. And he was contracted for Paramount to do this. And Robert Wise did, like, he came up through editing. He edited a lot of Orson Welles' films like Citizen Kane. He edited it, so he had an eye for editing. He knew what scenes should look like. So I think that's what made him really good. And he also produced Sand Pebbles as well, and he got his first sort of directing through Val Lewton, the producer for that was at RKO, I believe. He's sort of best known for like Cat People and stuff like that as a producer. And also now, a lot of these movies I've been making like a Star Trek connection. Well, Robert Wise, Star Trek connection. He directed the first Star Trek the motion picture in 1979. Whether you like it or not, there's the connection. Also, something else that's kind of interesting with this film is the doctor's wife does show up, but not as a researcher. She just says, "Oh, the newspapers have gotten control, or they, got the story, and they could ruin this." But she wants to stay the night. And the actress that's playing this, a very small role, is Lois Maxwell. Sound familiar? Think of James Bond. Think more specifically Miss Moneypenny. This was before her role as Miss Moneypenny. This is 1963. And the other thing that I find it interesting, she was Canadian born. She was born in Kitchener, Ontario, and that's where I lived for about 10 years and went to university in the next town, Waterloo, before I came to England. And also, she was in a short series that had she was a single mother of some children in northern Ontario called Rainbow. The show was called Rainbow Country, and that was filmed not far from where I grew up. So I like these little connections. But yeah, no, it's to me, this is one of the best horror, ghost type movies. But there really isn't a ghost in some ways. Like you can make an argument there is no ghost in this, and even in the book too. There's a possibility that there's no ghost because it's the house that's alive or that is possessed or whatever. Like, they don't go into it, but you don't see anything. You don't see, all you hear is noises. You like in the film you see a few things, like the door flex in and flex out, flex in, flex out, and things like that. But they experience these things, and that's where I just can't understand how people say it's all within Eleanor's mind, because other people are experiencing these things as well. And people have said the same thing I did last week, Rosemary's Baby. And Roman Polanski said that he made the ending ambiguous, so it's like you think it's still in her head. It's like there's too many people around. It's not. Like in the book, as you go through the book, you start to think, well, it could be. But even in like that's Rosemary's Baby, and then you find out you think it is real, but people still say it's not real, which I just can't understand. It's like it's got to be written in a different way if you want to get that across. In the haunting of Hill House, it is pretty clear that other people are hearing this as well, and she does have a psychological connection with this because Eleanor does because she feels a bit like they bring that out a little more in the film. That she feels that she didn't wake up one night and help her mother, and that's the night she died, and that's sort of what apparently might have happened to the companion, that she purposely didn't go help the old lady, and she died, and then she inherited this. So there is that connection to it. But yeah, it's done in black and white. It's fabulous. So the widescreen, and there's a great little snippet that Robert Wise was talking about that he liked because it seemed like probably was prompted by a question about filming in widescreen. He says no, it's fine, but he says when you make a close up of somebody, you've got to make sure there's something else, whether it's on the left side or the right side. You've got to make sure that there's something else happening on the other side of the screen that is interesting as well as the close up. And I thought that was very interesting. It's something very simple, but it's very interesting. And then, like I say, it's just to me, it's a fabulous film, and it should have been done in black and white, and it was done in black and white. Now we move to 1999. I think I have a bit of time to discuss this. The Haunting. This was done by DreamWorks, Steven Spielberg company, and it's like, well, that's probably why it's not the greatest, but okay. It's with Liam Neeson as the Doctor, but now it's, like I say, it's in the book as Dr. Montague, in the '63 film is Dr. Marquay, and in this one is Dr. Morrow. And instead of being a researcher in supernatural, he's in fear, a researcher in fear, or what happens to fear. So the whole project of this is to rent this sort of creepy house, and all these people have sleep deprivation. They're insomniacs or whatever. Nothing to do with supernatural stuff. That's all thrown out. That has nothing whatsoever to do in this story why he did this. And then he sort of plants sort of idea in the story on them to create a fear for themselves. And that's where he was going to observe and do all this because the surroundings worked for it. But, something else happened. And Catherine Zeta-Jones plays Theo. Not to the best. Like she's like a like stomping into a room where Claire Bloom would sort of glide into the room and be very subtle. What's her name that played sorry, I forget her name now. Is it Lily Taylor? It must be, yeah, Lily Taylor, that played Eleanor. And Luke was Owen Wilson. But again, he's Luke, but he's no connection to the Sanderson family. So basically, they say, like in the little extra, the director Jan de Bont was talking, and he says they couldn't get the rights to the film A Haunting 1963. They got the rights to the book, so they based it on the book. They didn't bloody well base it on the book. There's hardly anything in this film in this film, the 1999 version, that is of the book, because there are ghosts and there's children. There's a whole thing about children in it. Like, I won't go into too many details, but It's like it's all children, and it's like the house is way over the top. It's too over the top, and that's the one thing I didn't really care for. The relationships aren't the greatest between them, um, and yeah, it's just, and he brings, like, they have two other assistants that come in at the beginning, and then they disappear. Well, there's a reason for they disappear, but it just doesn't work in the story. It doesn't flow right. Like, why are they even there to begin with? They didn't need them there. It's like in the book they had the wife and the other researcher. They didn't need those. But I guess that's one thing they did take from the book. They brought in two characters that are not needed, and then get rid of them. Yeah, and it's just it's based on this. There are actually ghosts in it. Um, oh, sorry. I want to back up here. Bugger. The ending of this film, like I say, the book ends with her hitting the thing. This one, clearly she does the same thing, but she dies, and the house claims her, and that's the idea. Okay, done with that. In this one, as I say, there's children, there's ghosts. Everybody sees these things. They're being thrown around. The young Luke gets his head knocked off, chopped off, and he dies. There's skeletons in, like, the fireplace, and it turns out Eleanor is a descendant from this Hugh Crane that created this house and terrified all these children. And she dies at the end too, and she releases the children. She fights back this Ukraine, and their ghosts they go happily off into the ghostly sunset. Um, even so, I do enjoy this one, but it's totally divorced from the book, or even the original film. It's like nothing. There's hardly anything in this movie, in the 1999 film, that is reminiscent of the 63 film. They couldn't actually do that. They couldn't use any of the dialogue, apparently, because they couldn't get the rights to this. So they said they based it on the book, but there's nothing with the book. But I have huge problems with the book. I thought it was very juvenile. The characters weren't really. There's some interesting things, but there's stuff that she does that I don't like. I don't like the style of her writing. It's an interesting story. There's a lot of interesting ideas in it. I've always wanted to read it, but I will not be reading anything else by Shirley Jackson. I think she's a very poor writer, despite, like, I read something saying that she's the most important writer of the last 100 years, and I'm going, really? And I read that after reading like 4 pages, and I thought, oh, I hope it gets better then. It didn't. It didn't. And it's to me, it's like she was. I don't know if she's classed as young adult, like today, call it young adult. Then it was juvenile, even though with the uh, uh, implied lesbianism, or well, it's not lesbianism, but the lesbian character, and it's subtly done in there, and they do it a lot better in the film. And yeah, Claire Bloom, just can't say enough about how great Claire Bloom was. I'd seen this film last about 30 years ago, and I'd forgotten how great Claire Bloom is in this film. She's just marvelous. Everybody was marvelous in this film in the 63. But yeah, the book, as I say, and I've yet to see the series, the Netflix series, 10 parts, and apparently the second season of this haunting anthology is called Haunting of Bly House, which is based on Turn of the Screw, which is actually the next book that I'll be doing, because it's made into the film The Innocents by Jack Clayton. But I do want to see this series, the first season of this and the second one, because it's based on Turn of the Screw. But if you want to watch something, I say this one. This is, to me, like, I made. If you want, you can look at a top 10 list that I did of ghost films, and this came number 3. This came number 3. So it is right up there with me. And I was afraid, because after 30 years, after reading this book and not liking it, I struggled getting through it at times. That's why I think it took me the whole week. I struggled getting through it. I thought it was going to ruin the film for me, but it didn't. Thankfully, it didn't. Thankfully, yeah, it's still a fabulous film. I will go back to this film many more times. I don't know if I'll rewatch this one too many more times. I picked it up. It's a premium collection Blu-ray. I think they were exclusive to HMV here in the UK. And a year or two ago, there was a huge sale, and I got a whole bunch of them cheap, and I bought some of them. There was ones that were not part of the sale that I couldn't get, but I think I just got this one. This one because I needed an extra one to get the deal on. There was like two for something or three for something. But anyway, that's why I got this. But anyway, that's it. And like I say, next week is going to be um, The Innocents, and I'll be reading Turn of the Screw. I have not read Turn of the Screw. I'll be reading that over the weekend. This is the BFI, and there's a lot more background material I have for this. This has a really good commentary. Well, I'm sure it's going to be a good commentary by Christopher Failing, and I got a book about the film as well. So yeah, so stay tuned for next week. And I hope everybody's doing well and having a good weekend. Take care, BookTube.